I don't know if you're like me. I'll be out doing things and maybe doing chores or doing some task or doing some kind of work or mowing or I don't know where, just doing something or driving down the road, and all I know is I'm not home. There's certain songs we sing at church, and for some reason, all of a sudden it'll just, and I can't remember all the words, but I don't feel too bad because when I was an intern, I worked at a big church one summer, and I had never been around a church that big, and I was new to even learning the ministry. But on Sunday morning, I would sit with the minister in his chair, and they'd walk in from the back and look at all the audience, and he never knew a word to any of the songs. And I guess the people thought he was doing great, so I don't feel so bad, because he would just mumble through them all. I'll be out mowing, I'm thinking, all I know is and I must say the same thing 100 times, and then I say, I had to learn that song. Maybe I could go a little further while I'm out working. They would get me going. Isn't that crazy? Oh my goodness. I heard a man speak one time. He was a unique speaker. He said he had never spoken in public. There were about 8,000 men at this conference, and their family owned a horse special effort in Canadian Texas. And he said everybody said we were crazy buying a colt for $1 million, a little bitty colt. And he said, I guess it is a crazy journey, but it became a very, very popular horse. But he shared about tragedy in their family and shared about how God had worked and brought them to the Lord through that ownership of that horse and through things and events that happened in their family. But he said my father, he said he was kind of a crazy giver in his love for the Lord. He said he went to the bank one time and he said, I'd like to get a loan. And they said, well, what do you got for collateral? And he said, I got some cattle. And he said, well, how many you got? He said, I don't know. He said, I know I got 200 bulls. Because I count the bulls, I don't count the cows. The banker thought, that sounds pretty good. I bet we can work with that. And so he said my dad heard of this Christian group. They were needing some meat for their church camp or organization and needed money to purchase meat. And he said, so my dad, he got a side of beef and he hung it in this guy's yard. He said while he was sleeping, so the next day he got up and came out in his yard, this Christian guy, and here's this side of beef hanging in his yard with a sign on it saying, hey, hope you can use this in a great way. He said it wasn't money, but hey, some people don't have money, but they got beef. And I always remember that because when Paul says to excel in the grace of giving, and we come into the month of November, not everybody has money to give, but you have something that you can give. You have something that you can share. You have some way that you can bless people's lives. And there is a joy in giving and doing things. And my father was really excellent at that. And I try to be like my father, and I fall short a lot. And I've learned that it takes a unique person who loves to give a lot and enjoys the benefits that come from giving. Even Jesus said, it's more blessed to give than to receive. And I always challenge my Wednesday night students, In Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, where did Jesus say that? Not in any of them. And you say to yourself, now wait a second. The life of Christ is in Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. Yeah, it's in Acts chapter 20 where the Apostle Paul is quoting what Jesus said. And one of the qualifications to be who he was to have known Jesus. And he says, as he's talking to the Ephesian elders, even Jesus says, there is a blessing from giving things. There's a joy that comes from that. And Paul says in the Corinthian letter, in chapter 8, to excel in this grace of giving. This is a time of year where we see the decorations change. We see the weather change. We sit around and think, wow, did you realize next Sunday we have a Thanksgiving dinner? People are just celebrating Halloween, weren't they? And the devil's holiday and all of that kind of stuff, and thought, wow, you mean that just happened? And now we come from the harvest party, and it's, wow, what happened in there? What took place? This just happened so quick. But it brings us into this time of year. It is a season for giving, for sharing. And there's a joy that comes from that. Even Paul talks about it in 2 Corinthians chapter 8. And now, brothers, we want you to know about the grace that God has given the Macedonian churches. Out of the most severe trial, their overflowing joy and their extreme poverty welled up in rich generosity. And you know, some of the greatest givers in the world have went through the most severe trials. And they have learned from that how to share generosity with other people. As a minister, some of the most incredible things I have ever witnessed all the years that I've been in the ministry have come from the things that people do for others in a generous way. And it's amazing to watch it happen. One time in Wichita, the minister came up to me and he said, I need you to do something for me. You're the cowboy on our staff, right? And I said, right, I guess. Well, somebody gave a horse and a stock trailer to the church. I need you to do something with it so that we can get this turned around. Okay, I mean, can you ride the horse? Can you know, he said, oh, I don't know. They gave the trailer and the horse and everything to church. I needed to do something with it. And just times, you know, you'll be in a meeting and someone say, Ethel gave her house to the church. And what? This person gave all their land, and they, you know, and you just think, wow, this is crazy. I mean, how God blesses people's lives and how they want to bless someone else, and you watch and drink all this in, and it's just really overwhelming to see how God has touched people in their lives. Entirely on their own, they urgently plead with us for the privilege of sharing in the service of the saints. And they did not do it as we expected, but they gave themselves first to the Lord and then to us in keeping with God's will. So we urge Titus, seeing that earlier made a beginning, to bring also to completion this act of grace on your part. But just as you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in complete earnestness, and in your love for us, see that you also excel in this grace of giving. If you've been in any of my classes over the years, you will learn that I believe outside of God, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit, grace is one of the next greatest words in all the New Testament. I was ashamed to learn about grace about 3/4 of the way through college, being a Bible college student and not even knowing what grace was. But after a 45-minute lesson with a great professor one day, I came to the knowledge of what grace really meant. And I thought, I've missed out in my life. And you can't teach what you don't know. And if someone says, I'm a Christian, but they don't understand grace, if someone says, I love the Lord, but you don't understand God's grace, it is hard to be a motivated Christian and a great giver without understanding the grace of God. But I will tell you, all great givers understand God's grace, because that's what motivates them to do that. I have learned that the grace of God is a powerful thing. It is a motivating thing. If someone says that I am a Christian, I automatically assume that they pray. If someone says I'm a believer, I automatically assume they read the Bible. If someone says to me that I am a person who loves the Lord with all of my heart, I automatically assume that they are a giver. And if someone tells me I'm a Christian, I'm a believer, I love the Lord, then those are qualities that he brings out. Listen, you've done these things in your life, your faithfulness and your speech and your service. But remember, I want you to be excellent in this grace of giving, because there's something about doing things for people that they don't expect and they don't understand, that when you walk away, I remember going with Mike Myers to deliver Christmas presents. Oh my goodness. It's like traveling around with Bob Hope. It is crazy. He's a crazy man. We would go up to a house, and we had a bunch of gifts to give this family, and this one little kid running around with no clothes on, and Mike just walks in. He knows all these people. I'm thinking, they haven't even invited us. The door opens, he walks in. Hey, get your clothes on. What's your problem, boy? He's yelling at their kids, and this guy is like, come on in. And we bring these gifts into their home, and this man just stood there and he said, why? What are you doing this for? Mike goes, get out of the way, why not? And as we left, he's still standing there going, why'd you do this for us? Because the Lord loves you. The grace of God compels us to come to do this for you. That's what grace does. That's what great giving and the grace of Jesus Christ does to people. It's life-changing. I remember I was a little boy, and we moved from Kansas to Oklahoma. I couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 years old, because I know the time period it took place. And while we were moving into our home, a group of people came from a church in Cleveland and brought a pot of stew or chili to our house. And they welcomed us to a church. And they helped us to move in. I'm a Timothy of that church today. That grace is never forgotten. You stand there and go, why'd you come to our house and bring food to us? Because we love you. Because God loves you. We want to reach out to you with the grace of giving. It's not always about money, but he says in this area, it is part of it. You know, we need to establish God's Word as the final authority in all financial matters. What God means and what God says is more important than anything else, and that settles it. Psalm 119, verse 133 says, direct my footsteps according to your word, and let no sin rule over me. Churchill said, we make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. There is something about being generous with others at the perfect timing. I don't know how many times ministers are ready to quit and to do something else in life, only to go to their car and get a note from a church member saying, "Thank you for being our preacher. And we don't know what we would do if you hadn't come here to preach to us on the very day that you're wanting to change." Giving's not always about money, but he says to excel in this, not just give any. And when you look at the Bible and look at all the other teachings, we're not to give reluctantly or under compulsion or because someone else gives, I give. It is the motivation of the grace of God that these people had been under incredible pressure, but they were going to give because it was a part of their life. A part of my life is to pray. A part of my life is to study the Bible. A part of my life is to be a part of the Lord's Supper. And a part of my life is to give. Giving is a part of my life, even to the point where it hurts or to the place where people don't understand it. It's a part of my life, and it should be a part of every believer's life. Dedicate to God all money, possessions, time, and earning power. Deuteronomy chapter 8, remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth. Count your blessings. Name them one by one. And it will surprise you what the Lord wants done. Some give God what is left over of their loyalty. Some give God what is left over of their time. Some give God what is left over of their money. Some give God what is left over of their energy. Some give God what is left over of their ability. Some give God what is left over of their life. But in Ecclesiastes 12:1 it says, remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the time of trouble comes, when you can't do anything for God anymore. Remember Him when you're young. Most of the people that I have seen give their lives to Jesus Christ have said one prevailing statement: I wished I'd have done this a long time ago. Because these have been wonderful years following God. Establish your giving as an expression of worship. In 1 Corinthians 16:2 it says, on the first day of the week each one of you should set aside a sum of money in keeping with his income. And I think that ingratitude is something we have to be careful of. You're not going to get anything by a preacher. I've been in the ministry for quite a while, just like any of you, that you think you're going to go to the dentist and surprise him? You think you're going to go to the doctor and surprise them? They have seen it. You think you're going to go to a counselor and your situation is different than the other 10,000 they've already seen? You're not going to surprise people. And you're not going to surprise. I know all the angles of the men. I know because I've thought of all of them. I'm just like you. I roll over sometimes on Sunday morning. I'm not going today. And Cindy is like, you have to go. I'm not going. I'm sick of Mike Myers. I'm not going. I just don't want to put up with him today. And the praise band won't let me sing. I keep trying to sing and they won't let me sing. So I'm just not going. I don't have anything to pray about. I don't have a sermon I want to talk about. I don't want to go. You think, that doesn't happen at our house. Yeah, it does. Then Cindy has to get a big stick and prompt me to where I need to be. I know that if you skip church, hey, if I skip church, I don't have to give today, and that's more money in my pocket. I know you're not going to get anything by what a preacher has never seen, but it's not about me. I'm just a guy who loves the Lord. I don't determine your eternal salvation. I just help point you in the right direction. God is the one that you have to answer to, and there's nothing that he has not seen. There's nothing that he will never remember. He knows it all. He sees it all. So why try to fool him? That just doesn't work. It needs to be a part of your worship. Evaluate every expenditure on how it will benefit and honor God. Proverbs 3:9, honor the Lord with your wealth. Psalm 92:1 said it is a good thing to give thanks to the Lord. My wife and I have a policy that we live by, that we never make big expenditures unless we pray about it. Usually that's in the form of an automobile, the most losing commodity you will ever own, and a home. And we just draw, we're not typical. And I have to be careful. I mean, I'm a thinker. I'm the kind of person, I'm going to think about it. I'm going to talk about it. And people are like, just spend the money. And Cindy is the person that jumps in the first seat of the first thing. Let's get this one. And so we just say, hey, we're going to thank you very much. We're going to go home and pray about it, and we'll get back to you. Oh, you might as well just kill them. Because they've been taught to never let you out of that room. They go to these hyper sales conventions where their brain is just screaming about all these things you can never let people do, and that's the things that we do, that they've been taught to not let us do. But we go, it doesn't mean we're not coming back. They're just completely shocked when you come back the next day and say, hey, we prayed about it, we thought about it, we're going to buy it. You are? Then I let you out of here and you came back? Yeah. Wow. Like, why is that so shocking that we need, because the things that we do, we want to pray about it. We want to honor God with what we're doing in our life and make sure it's a good decision. We did that when we prayed about all of you. And we decided to come. Isn't that shocking? You can think there's something wrong with them. Determine to become rich towards God. Jesus even talked about laying up treasures in heaven, not treasures where moth and rust can destroy. You see, that gets back to the topic of understanding God and His incredible grace. We spend a lot of time storing up treasures. I mean, the American story is he who dies with the most toys wins, right? He who has the largest bank account, the most toys, wins. Wins what? I don't know, but he wins. That's what we're taught in our culture. Jesus taught the person who understands God, who falls in love with the grace of God, who understands Jesus, who understands eternal things, that's where you should store up your treasures in heaven. But we're so in love with this earth. We're so in love with the things of earth. But I'm going to tell you something. After you die, and if Jesus doesn't come first, we all are, one look at his face and you'll forget about this place. He'd been working on it for over 2,000 years. One look into his face and the things of earth will grow strangely dim. We sing about it, and that's true. We need to be storing up treasures in heaven, eternal treasures that are so special. And Paul says these people understood that in their generosity. They've been through terrible trials, but in their poverty, they still want to be rich in their generosity. That's where giving really gets tough, is when you don't have it to give. I mean, I remember one of my elders in Missouri, and I will never forget this, and I've shared this with you before, that when we would be in meetings saying we've got to have this amount of money to move forward as a church, and we got to have this amount of money to be able to accomplish these projects, and we can't vote yes, and he would stand up, Mr. Hicklin would, and he'd say, listen, if we have the money to do it, that's not faith. It's only faith if we don't have the money to do it. Then we decide to do it and seek God while we're pursuing it, that He will fill in the blanks. He said, now that's faith. And so they're like, well, all right, let's change our vote. And when we come to giving in our lives, sometimes we don't have it. But you know what? God has taken care of every one of us. If we spent half as much time as we should thanking God for His many blessings, we wouldn't have any time left to complain about our problems. John Wesley said this, earn all you can without injuring your soul, your body, your neighbors. Save all you can, avoid any unnecessary waste. Give all you can to the Lord. If you follow His advice, you will never be a slave of money, but a master of it. As the praise team gets ready to come this morning, I want to share with you this. To a friend, give them loyalty. To an enemy, give them forgiveness. To your boss, give him service. To a child, give a good example. To your father, give respect. To your mother, give gratitude and devotion. To your spouse, give love and faithfulness. To all men, give charity. And to God, the best way to excel in giving is to give Him your life. I mean, isn't that what it all boils down to? The best way that I can really tell God that I really, truly love Him, that I really, truly believe in Him, is to give Him my heart, my soul, my mind, and my strength. To give Him my life. I have nothing else to give, God, but this, and I give it to you, to do with it as you please. I totally submit my life to you. Do with it as you please. Paul shares his heart about these people. They had struggled, but they were willing to give in the offering that Paul was collecting for the Jerusalem churches. And he says, you've done so well in all these areas. A lot of people do really well in so many areas, but in other areas we hold back. And sometimes we don't have money to give, but we have a side of beef we can hang in somebody's yard. We have service to give. Some of you have incredible talents to do incredible things, and you may not have money to give, but you can go and use that talent to give that to someone else for their enjoyment, to help them out. And that is a special ability. My father's house was caving in. My dad was always working on it. Always working on it. And he would come visit, and he'd go, say, I noticed you got a deal here. I'm going to come up and bring some tools. No, don't come work on my house. Your bathrooms, go fix your own bathroom. But he would totally ignore everything else in his life to go help somebody else. What a great quality. What a great quality. Because so many times where we're like, is I'm going to mow my yard, I'm going to weed eat my garden, I'm going to paint my house, I'm going to get my vehicles tuned up, I'm going to get all the things that I have in order, I'm going to get all my bills done, all my taxes done, all my chores done, and then maybe I'll go to the church and see if they need anything. That's not what God's talking about. That's putting yourself first and God second. We need to excel in the grace of taking care of someone else at the neglect of myself. Excel in the grace of giving. Don't just give, but excel in it. Be good at it. Enjoy it. Do it because, hey, I love being a Christian and I love the joy that comes from giving because of what it does to people. And maybe, just maybe, someday somebody will stand up and say, I'm a Timothy of that church because someone excelled in the grace of giving when I was little. Mike Myers walked into my house and gave our family a gift and I couldn't understand why. Or that someone did something for me and it was special and it changed my life. Or your church prayed for our baby to love the Lord and they have always loved the Lord. What a greater prayer is there for all children to love the Lord. So this morning, when it comes to excelling in the grace of giving and entering into the Thanksgiving month of talking about giving, maybe one of the greatest gifts that you could give God is this morning as we sing to give Him your life.